My toxic parents forced me to surrender my luxury estate to my golden child brother. I signed over the house but secretly retained the private utility infrastructure and legally condemned his property. My parents aggressively demanded that I sign over the deed to my custom-built luxury home to accommodate my golden child brother's growing family. Instead of fighting a massive, toxic battle, I legally subdivided the property. I gave him the physical house, but I retained absolute ownership of the surrounding land and the private utility grid. When he arrogantly breached our contract, I legally severed his water and power, forcing the county authorities to permanently condemn his home. I work in commercial software development and prefer a highly isolated lifestyle. 5 years ago, I utilized my savings to purchase a massive 100-acre parcel of undeveloped rural land. I spent heavily to install a state-of-the-art off-grid infrastructure system. This included a massive commercial-grade solar array, a deep water well, and a highly advanced septic system. I built a stunning luxury home right in the center of the property. A year later, I built a much smaller, highly efficient secondary cabin on the far edge of the property to use as a quiet workspace. My older brother is the undeniable family golden child. He refuses to hold a steady job, constantly demands financial support from our parents, and possesses an incredibly arrogant sense of entitlement. Recently, he got married and had twins. My parents called a mandatory family meeting. They explicitly demanded that I vacate my primary luxury home and transfer the property deed to my brother. They argued that a single person did not need a large house, and it was my strict familial obligation to provide for his new children. They threatened to launch a devastating social media campaign against my professional business if I refused to cooperate. I did not argue, yell, or cause a scene. I calmly agreed to their demands, but I immediately hired a specialized real estate attorney and a licensed land surveyor. I legally subdivided my massive property. I drew a strict 1-acre square boundary exactly around the physical footprint of the luxury house. I signed a quitclaim deed transferring only that single acre to my brother. I moved my belongings into my smaller cabin and retained absolute legal ownership of the remaining 99 acres. What my parents and my brother completely failed to understand was rural utility law. The massive solar array, the deep water well, and the septic drainage field were all physically located on my 99 acres. The luxury house was completely dependent on my land to function. To make the transfer legal, my lawyer drafted a highly strict binding utility easement contract. It stated that my brother was granted access to the water and power, provided he paid a substantial annual maintenance fee. My brother moved his family into the luxury house and immediately began acting as if he owned the entire 100-acre estate. He purchased recreational off-road vehicles and began tearing up my private forests. When the first day of the new year arrived, I formally served him with the invoice for the annual utility and easement maintenance fee. My brother and my parents drove up to my cabin, laughing. My father threw the invoice on the ground and explicitly stated that family does not pay arbitrary fees. My brother smugly declared that since the pipes were already connected to his house, there was absolutely nothing I could do to stop him from using the water and power for free. They turned around and drove away. By blatantly refusing to pay the required fee, my brother legally voided the utility easement contract. The next morning, while my brother was away in the city, I hired a heavy excavation crew and a licensed electrician. Because the utility infrastructure was entirely on my private property, I had the absolute legal right to manage it. I directed the crew to dig down exactly at the 1-acre property line. We physically severed the underground water pipes and capped the septic lines. The electrician completely disconnected the high-voltage power cables feeding his house. To finalize the separation, I had a heavy-duty, 10-foot-tall steel security fence constructed directly along the 1-acre boundary, permanently landlocking his property. My brother returned home to a completely dead house. He had no electricity, no running water, and no functioning toilets. He called the police in an absolute panic, accusing me of vandalism. And when the officers arrived, I provided the subdivided property deeds and the voided easement contract. The police calmly informed my brother that this was a civil contract dispute. I was entirely within my legal rights on my own land, and they could not force me to reconnect his utilities. The situation escalated 3 days later. Because a residential dwelling legally requires running water and a functioning sanitary sewer system to be considered habitable, I anonymously contacted the county health department. A code enforcement officer was dispatched to inspect my brother's property. The officer found a luxury home with 0 running water and a severed septic system. The county immediately classified the house as a severe biohazard and formally condemned the property. My brother was served with an emergency eviction notice by the state and was legally forced to vacate the premises within 24 hours. Because no bank will finance a condemned landlocked house without utility access, the property became completely worthless. My parents drained their entire retirement fund trying to hire lawyers to fight the county, but the strict property laws were undeniable. My brother was forced to move his family into a cramped rental apartment, and I eventually repurchased the condemned house at a county tax auction for mere pennies.